Welcome to Middy's Metrics. If you're new to the channel, I give you breakdowns on all the little things, and sometimes even the big ones. We're going to talk about learning today. Learning doesn't actually just happen. It's a process that you have to constantly fight to improve. There's hundreds of ways you can do this too. Where do you even start? Science can tell you so much about learning, from psychology, physiology, and sociology. There's tips and tricks hiding in every corner to pull from. I can't tell you the secret to pass any test, but I can give you some of the building blocks to learn and the basis to create a better education for yourself. These 5 tips that there's scientific evidence and research based around will help you get started. Learning is all about making connections and recalling important data. The more connections you make, the more you recall, the better you'll do. But learning or reviewing these things once when the hour of need is already on top of you is bad for learning. One way to enhance your learning is to sequence your studying. When you sequence your studying, you chunk it into smaller blocks. It can help with engagement, excitement, strengthening your memory, and providing points of rest from high-intensity comprehension. Science backs up that the more difficult remembering the information is, the better you'll remember it going forward. There's also evidence to support that recovering a memory when you're on the cusp of losing it strengthens the memory further. Here are a few things you can do to help you implement sequencing to get this science on your side. The start of spacing out your learning well is a good schedule. Pretty much any good curriculum starts and ends with you making time to learn and parceling out consistent times. Setting out 3 times a week where you study certain subjects will create a baseline for improvement, and on top of it, improve your work-life balance. Turning those sessions into a couple, maybe even a few half-hour blocks, where you'll give yourself breaks in between of 10 to 30 minutes, will utilize it to the fullest. Ideally, you'd want to put them a bit after you've learned the subject, to give your brain time to process and encode the new information. You also want to highlight recalling in these study sessions. Using mnemonic devices, flashcards, or games can produce an optimal learning experience for sequencing. If you couple those with metrics that track your progress, you'd also significantly improve your learning. Please remember, it's not important you have an exact structure, but you should get as close as you can because consistency is key. Start learning with sequencing and you could see the progress as soon as next month. People often forget that preparing yourself for learning is one of the most important steps to learning. The best way to prepare yourself to learn is to make sure you have an environment conducive to learning. But what exactly does that mean? Well, that's the perfect place to start because by itself, it doesn't mean anything at all. Are you trying to sculpt an environment for focused productivity? Or are you trying to create a jumping off point where you can have an endless amount of knowledge for free association? Maybe you're just trying to test what you've learned. It's even possible you need to get your research and findings peer reviewed. These all require slightly different approaches to your setup. There are some basic rules and guidelines that will make the process of molding a place for yourself to learn way easier. You're going to want to work in a clean environment. Messiness is not good for learning. Clutter, trash, or piles can distract and irritate you. Whether things are essential to learning or not, they should be well organized and stored within convenient reach in order to sponsor focus. Noise can be bad for your learning as well. Cutting down on the loud and jarring noise will keep you on track. When you learn with people, you have to consider very carefully how they fit into it. If they're helping you learn, you should be actively interacting and engaging with them. If not, you should try minimizing their disturbance to your environment. Studies show that recalling information works best when it's in a similar environment and circumstances they were encoded in. That means if you're going to be tested on a subject in a gray room at an empty desk, you should try replicating that environment for the learning process. I don't actually expect you to replicate environments though. You should know this is still important though, because if you're trying to learn propped up in a bed or trying to learn at a football game, the day you need to remember you might be at a loss. One last thing to make sure is right about your environment is how you feel about it. Does your learning space feel safe? It might make learning hard if you're constantly anxious in your environment. You also want to make sure you keep a positive attitude. Being positive will help you maintain the momentum you need in space for education. It's important that if other people aren't positive as well, that you try extending the positivity to them, because creating a good environment for learning doesn't start or end with you. You might know how to sculpt your environment to learn now, but remember that you should learn from the environment as well. It will inform you just as much as the material or the teacher. You might believe physical education classes are the only place for exercise and learning environment, but you'd be wrong. There's loads of evidence to date that show exercising can have both direct and indirect effects on your cognitive performance. Exercising has been observed to improve working memory in studies. The fact that exercise can also prevent anxiety or depression means it doubles to improve your learning ability. If you get in the activity during a well-placed stopping point, you can reinvigorate yourself on top of refreshing your attention. You're going to want to sprinkle in small, intermittent light activity during learning. If you're studying for any more than a half hour, I would strongly recommend a small walk, a stretching session, maybe toss if you're studying with a friend. If you're in a more formal environment, you could present your teacher the learning benefits of exercise and suggest to your teacher a mid-class break for movement. Usually teachers are willing to reconfigure their class time around optimal and helpful learning tactics. One of the most important things I can say about physical activity and learning is that the activity has to synergize with the info you're absorbing. I'm not telling you to go for a sprint or go play a game of football. These should be low-intensity series of movement that allow you to focus on what you just absorbed. All physical activity will technically improve your learning process, but to maximize learning, you have to choose the activity carefully. Now that you know how to make moves and learn while you're doing it, you might want to take a walk and think a little bit about what I just said. The more we learn about education, the more we learn about the benefits of active learning and the upsides of implementing interaction into the process. One of the most effective ways to actively learn is to create. When you make something that relates to what you've learned, you have to consider it as a puzzle. What information will help this process? How does this fit into the whole? And will this contribute positively to the final product? You stick pieces in where they fit and understand the material you're using in a different way than you originally used it. It will also allow you to use different parts of your brain in each step. Language, creativity, and critical thinking, just to name a few. Creating things will also give you opportunities to ask questions and re-examine what you've learned by adding built-in reviews. You might implement this by putting projects for yourself into your education process. Project learning consistently outperforms non-project learning. There's a reason why the first thing you usually think of when you consider science is the experiments you've done. They're engaging, they strengthen your understanding of the subject, and they redefine how you consider the lesson. You can also use what you create to further your efforts in future studying. Writing about wacky characters that involve the very same concepts that you're employing are proven memory strategy. Figuring out how to make a game out of what you learned can strengthen your perspective on it in multiple ways by giving you an outlet to engage with others on the subject, as well as an understanding of how you might teach these concepts to someone else. Creating quizzes is also a great idea because testing yourself on information is a tried and true method for learning. Evidence might be everywhere, but you don't even have to make it complicated. Just know that whatever you're learning, making things happen gets you further than seeing it happen. I can tell you're already on your way to improving your study habits because you do something that's important for learning every single day. Sleep. When people sleep, there are so many things going on in their heads that improve their cognitive state. Our current understanding of sleep on the process of learning is that it has massive effects. When you sleep, your brain consolidates memories, creating connections and streamlining their access. What we know of the process indicates that during sleep, we convert the input we receive into long-term memory. If you notice, I've just used a lot of keywords for learning. It's no coincidence either. Sleep may just be the most important aspect of learning. Research suggests that hour for hour, sleep may be even more important than study time. I've already talked a little bit on synergies for mental health and learning, but so far sleep is the most effective in that contest. Reducing irritability, anxiety, and depression can all be helped by a better sleep schedule. You really do get the most bang for your buck staying in an optimal state to learn by sleeping. One of the ways to work this into your personal study endeavors is to increase the amount of days you interact with the subject. If you just leaf through your notes on the days when you know you aren't going to study in depth, you'll still make big leaps in strengthening your connections to the learning material. This relates to sleep because you'll also be adding another night of memory consolidation into your studying that strengthens the material you checked in on. It might not seem like this does much, but coupled with your normal studying times, these small reminders will compound to seriously improve your memory on the area of interest. Next thing we need to talk about is naps. In a German study, it was found that even a nap as little as 6 minutes could improve recall of words. Naps of different sizes do different things to your brain, too. A 10 to 20-minute nap will leave you refreshed and give you a boost to your reaction time for answers, while a 60-minute nap could help with memorizing names, places, and numbers. A 90-minute nap will help with creativity and emotional processing. If you put one of these naps right after a successful study session, you're pretty much guaranteed better recall of the information. Now that you know exactly how much 8 hours and a nap can help you learning, don't sleep on it before you read on it. I've had so many teachers in the past who just sort of softballed all of these concepts. From my essential elements teacher in high school telling me built-in review and wide time span of teaching was her aim based off of all the available evidence, to recess time in elementary school. There really is so much more care put into the process than we give credit for. I think it's important to understand how interconnected all of these things I just laid out for you are. They all work together when you group them to help your physical, mental, and emotional state to improve your cognitive abilities. Connecting them will only help with learning. Did you ask yourself during my examination of sleep if you can use breaks for sequencing to take naps? Great! You might have thought about putting note cards in your studying environment to encourage an engaging studying and crafting habit. Absolutely. Maybe you thought, I could do a walk before I take my math exam. Perfect! I think you know what I'm getting at here. Your learning opportunity has so much more dimension than people give it credit for, and you may not be able to utilize every little thing here, but understanding the small places you could pull from to improve is the first step towards learning the best you can. What do you think of what I have here? I'd love to know how you optimize your learning. Is there some way more beneficial to learning than what I had on the list? If there is, drop it in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want to see more deep dives into the science that affects us.